Hello readers, I'm Amy and today we're gonna do a book haul. This book haul I think would have started around like June through October. I haven't done a book haul in a while, so I'm just gonna go through all of the books that I got this year. This year I got to start an internship and then that turned into a full-time job where I'm working from home. I'm finally at a point in my life where I'm only working one job and it's so nice. So I've had way more time for reading. I've done more reading this year than I've done in a little while. Also more book buying than I have done in a little while. So hope you like this. To get started, I'm really quick gonna go through the books that I got through Audible. Not entirely sure, again, when this particular haul of books started. Honestly, I think this is pretty much like books that I've bought this year, really. So I will start with, like I said, with Audible. I picked up Vida Nostra. This is a Ukrainian fantasy. Only the first book is translated. I hear that the second book is coming out sometime next year as a translation. Really excited for that. This is the weirdest fantasy that I think I have ever read. It's such a soft magic and you never really learn all that much about it, but you're seeing the physical changes that are happening to the people who are learning this magic. It's very much dark academia. I absolutely loved it. I am officially on the dark academia train. Highly recommend picking it up if you're looking for a weird, unexplainable fantasy that is still incredibly enjoyable. Then Cultish, I read this already. I did a buddy read with Hillary from Melted Books. We loved this. We read half of it together and then she went on vacation, so I reread the first half and then she came back and we finished it off. So I might go ahead and reread the second half and then I will have reread it, or I would have read it twice this year, which totally worth it. Had a great time talking about the language of fanaticism, and she really goes in depth with like what sort of things do people in cults say to bring other people in and to keep you in and to essentially drain you of all of your exterior resources so you're really just kind of hooked into this cult and can't get out. Then there's The Family Across the Street, which honestly I don't remember anything about this book. I know I really liked it. I had a good time, but I read it so quickly and it was among so many other books that I was reading at the time that I can't actually remember what it's about, and I feel bad. I think it was an Australian book, but I read this for a book club with some friends, with some neighbors, so it was a good time, and I know it's a good book, just don't ask me what it's about. Then we have Pretty Baby by Chris Belcher. This one I picked up as a recommendation from Instagram. It was fine. It was a nonfiction about a person who does sex work, I think in Los Angeles, and it was fine, but like it wasn't totally focused on the sex work, it wasn't totally focused on the mental health, it wasn't totally focused on the life. It's like I didn't really get the point that the author was trying to make with that one, so it was fine. I think it was like a solid 3 stars. The writing was pretty good. Then, let me look here. Do I have any? I don't think I have any Kindle books to really talk about. I picked up a book on Kindle Unlimited, but I just found it as a physical book, so we can go ahead and skip that for now. Okay, that is it for ebooks. Now let's jump into some graphic design books really quickly. I picked up The Look of the Book. I did read this whole thing. It's more of like a large coffee table book sort of thing, but I am super interested in book design. I would love to design book covers at some point someday, so I picked this up. It goes a lot into classic books in particular, exploring the different covers of classic books over time, so it's really interesting to study the different art styles through the decades and how they affected the book covers of things like Moby Dick, Great Gatsby, Philip Roth books. Like it was so fascinating for me. Again, I would love to be a book designer someday. In that same general area, we do have this on Kindle, but I finally picked up a physical copy of Paperbacks from Hell, so I now own all of Grady Hendrix's published books. I haven't read through this one yet. I am starting to get a lot more into reading horror, so I think I'm going to be exploring this a lot more soon. I don't know that I'll be one of those people who like collects all of the books that are in this book. I'm not quite that person right now, but again, I would love to just look at horror book covers throughout time. Like it's fascinating to me. I want to pick up a lot more book design books. There's some that I have my eye on, but they tend to be really large books, so they tend to be really expensive, so haven't really invested too much into that just yet. Next, I have a lot of horror books, so I think we'll go over like the other genres first, and then I'll finish off with the horror books since they're kind of their own section. I picked up I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette Mccurdy. This book was amazing. I think I would have liked it better in audio form. I hear a lot about how awesome her dark humor is, and while it is good in the physical book, I know that she's the reader of her own audiobook, and I hear that the dark comedy really hits home there. So this was amazing. There is some conversation about the title. Personally, I'm here for it. Like, you gotta cope how you gotta cope. If you think that it's horrible that she titled this book the way she did, well, obviously you have different family dynamics than she did. I thought this was awesome. I was not a Nickelodeon kid, I was a Disney kid, so I haven't watched anything that she's acted in, but I read it anyway, and I thought it was a fantastic exploration of how complicated your feelings around family can be. So I'm with the rest of the world on this one, where I highly recommend, and I thought it was super well done. Then we have Babel by Rf Quang. This, I just did another buddy read with Hillary from Melted Books, and we both gave it 5 stars. Was it a little heavy-handed with the colonialism stuff? Yes, but I think that it kind of has to be, because as much as we're talking about colonialism today and racism, there are still so many people that it's just like not getting through, so I understand why she was heavy-handed with it. Brilliant book. The main character was a little bit naive, but sometimes you have to have a naive main character to really help get your point across. It is similar to her, what were they called, like Poppy Wars series, where the magic is so, it's not a soft magic system, but it's just not focused on. There's not really a lot that's necessarily given to us with the magic system, so you know that like the magic system is kind of a way to sell the book. The fantasy of it, I think, is a way to get the book on shelves and get the book into people's homes, get them reading it, get them interested, because colonialism is the point. Magic is not the point of these books, and I respect that. I thought this was really well done, and I love that it's a standalone, because I don't read a lot of fantasy because so much of fantasy is part of series, and I'm not a big series reader, so I love having another fantasy standalone to add to my shelves, because I like fantasy. There's so many series, and I want more standalones. I just do. This one might have been a little bit earlier in the year that I bought this. But anyways, Welcome to Night Vale. I saw the Woman Who Lives in Your House book. It wasn't exactly the title, but I saw that at Barnes & Noble. I thought it looked interesting, and so I looked into the podcast. I really liked it. I've listened to most of the podcast, not so much the new episodes. I like the older episodes better. But I listened to enough of the podcast to know that I really liked it, and I went ahead and picked up the first book, Welcome to Night Vale. Characters in this are also seen or heard throughout the podcast, so I liked that that was kind of integrated. This is just like a story within the world. I also think that this is the first absurdist book that I've actually read, and I had a good time, which absurdism is not something that I gravitate towards at all. Like, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy felt so over my head, honestly, but I might have to give it another try because I did enjoy this. So I might slowly start dipping my toes into the absurdism genre. Then we have some Isaac Asimov. I am working on a vlog right now going through the Robot series, which I've read most of that series before, but it's been so spread out over the years that none of the books were really making a huge impact, so now I'm reading them back to back, and I'm really enjoying them. So that vlog will be out hopefully in a couple of weeks, but I went ahead and picked up the next series. I don't know what the series is called, but we have, Galactic Empire. It's the Galactic Empire series. There's 3 books. I really liked these covers. I have specific covers for the Robot series that I purchased, and I'm going to get that same version of covers for the Foundation series when I'm done reading these. But these ones don't have that series of covers, but regardless, I do really like these covers, so I'm going to give this a try. I like that it's only 3 books, so it'll be a small series in between his 2 big ones. His writing isn't necessarily my favorite. It's a lot more tell than show, but I really like his concepts and the discussions that he has, so I'm excited to pick those up. Finally, got myself a copy of Book Lovers. Thanks again to Hillary from Melted Books for sending me a Barnes & Noble gift card for my birthday, and this is one of the books that I was able to pick up with it. I've been wanting to pick it up for a while. It's just like, it's not one of the things that ended up being in my pile when I went shopping, but I did finally get it. I've heard great things. I'm finally admitting, yes, I do like romance. I don't like romance in non-romance genres because I feel like it distracts from the story, but if it's a romance book, I actually do have a really good time. So I'm going to start growing my romance collection a little bit. And actually, speaking of romance, I'll do my 2 other romance books that I picked up. I got the first volume of Heartstopper. I found this at the Friends of the Library, and I was doing some volunteer stuff at the time that I saw it, and the lady that I was working with was like, you know what, just take it. Just take it with you. Just go. So I didn't pay anything for this book, which is really awesome. I struggle with buying graphic novels. There's so many graphic novels that I've read and really loved, but I just haven't gotten myself to pay a regular book price for a graphic novel because there's so much less writing in graphic novels than in other books, which I know isn't fair because there's so much artwork in graphic novels that it's like you're paying for the artwork. Even if there's less writing than the average book, there's more art than the average book. So like, it shouldn't be an issue, but for some reason, it's just not something that I've invested in. That is some work I need to do for myself, but I do want to start expanding my graphic novel collection. I would love to have a physical copy of The Magic Fish. I would love to have all of the Heartstopper novels eventually. There's a couple other ones. There was a Vietnamese one that I read, I think at the very beginning of this year, that I'd love to have a copy of. So that's something I'm going to work with my brain on. Then My Killer Vacation, this one popped up on Twitter where someone was like, hey, who wants to do a buddy read for this? And I'm like, it's romance, but it's like mystery. Okay. So I went ahead and picked it up. I knew I'd heard of Tessa Bailey before. She has done a lot of really well-known books, but this one, as far as I can tell, is actually self-published. And I had a good time. Like, there wasn't a lot of mystery to it because it is a romance and the focus is more on the romance, so I wouldn't have minded if it was longer, if the stakes were a little bit higher, if there was more mystery and kind of thrilling mystery adventure to it, but I had a good time. This is one of the kinkier romance books that I've read, and let's just say I really enjoyed that. So I do recommend this. I think that this was a solid read. I had a good time doing the buddy read for it. Also, the author's name is Tessa Bailey, and her main character's name is Taylor Bassey. It's hilarious, and I loved it. And then another kind of romance one is Pleasure Activism. This is a nonfiction. I used to work at an adult shop whenever I was in college. I loved it. That was one of the best jobs that I've ever gotten to work. And I was visiting again a couple months back, and one of the people that I used to work with, she started a book club now with, I think with a sex therapist and like some other people. So they're doing their like sex book club, and this was the book that they were reading for that month, and she bought me this copy, which is very sweet of her. So thank you to you for buying this book for me. I am going to pick this up soon. I am planning on doing Nonfiction November because there is a lot of nonfiction that I want to read, and I just have not sat down to go through it. I also just found that there's some really cool artwork in this book, which I probably shouldn't show on camera, but maybe that'll intrigue you enough to pick up a copy of your own. Hello again. Jumping in here really quick, because if you know me, you know that I forgot something. I forgot Devil House. I knew there was another book in there somewhere. Devil House by John Darnielle. He's written a couple of other books. I haven't read those. I am, once again, doing a buddy read with Hillary from Melted Books. I'm not sure on this yet. Like, it's interesting, but it's a dry enough read that I'm kind of struggling to pick it up. I was thinking it would be more of a haunted house book, and it might be. I don't know. But it's kind of a meta story analyzing the writing of true crime. So it's a fiction book, but it's about this author who writes true crime, and it's exploring kind of his morals and his ideas about writing true crime and looking at the stories of what happened or what he wrote about them. So it's just a little bit dry. It's really slow. I'm not quite to the halfway point yet. And while I'm interested in the topic, I'm like, when is the story gonna start? So yes, there's the book that I forgot. Two more books in the general pile. We have Beasts of a Little Land. This one was completely a cover buy. I mean, just look at how gorgeous that is. And it's like two different art styles, which I really love. This one is about the Koreas. It kind of goes through like most of I think it's like the first half of the 1900s. It was a little bit literary for me, but I did thoroughly enjoy it. There was an author discussion that I meant to take part in for this book that I ended up having to miss out on. But you're following a woman who, I think her parents had sold her to the courtesans because they needed money to live. And so she's growing up as a courtesan, and you kind of get a look into that life and the view of women in Korea. You're getting a look at the politics of the Koreas at this time. And it's a part of Korean history that you really just don't hear a lot about. So I did have a good time with it. Absolute favorite book? No. Talented author that I will probably pick up again? I think so. I don't know that this one is actually a horror book. Maybe it is a horror book. I haven't read it yet. I meant to pick it up like last week, and I've just had things happen. So I am planning on picking it up soon. This one, so whenever I picked up Beasts of a Little Land, that was at the Country Bookshelf in Bozeman. Really cute bookshop, has so many options. One of my favorite bookshops in Montana, by far. But I was looking up their website before we went shopping there because I wanted to see like just what all was on the website. I was curious. And they had a list of recommendations from one of the workers at the shop, like on the website. And this is one of the recommendations that came up. Everyone knows Your Mother is a Witch. Based on that title, I want to read this. I'm in a witchy mood. I love a good witch story. I just don't read a lot of witch stories. I don't, I guess, see them around as much as like vampire novels. But I want to grow my witchy collection. This is one of the books that I found. I'm going to pick it up this month for sure. Then this is a book that I already owned, but I did not like the cover at all. Wasn't my favorite book from the author, but I do want to start collecting the author, and that is Fledgling by Octavia Butler. It has a book box. Look at this. Just appreciate this. And online recently I saw, I think it was the Parable of the Sowers series in these book boxes with these covers, and like those are the ones that I'm gonna buy for sure. This is the book cover itself. I love that we have these circles that kind of like interrupt the painting, but it still catches your eye. It's still looking at you. Absolutely gorgeous. Fledgling is a vampire novel by Octavia Butler. I believe it was published posthumously, if I remember correctly. And it just made me feel weird because you have a very old vampire in a child's body and they have adult relationships, and I don't know how to feel about that, but I do love that it was a different take on vampires and how they had kind of their own groups and territories. I thought that was really interesting, so I do recommend giving it a try. Then I have Reluctant Immortals. I talked about this in a book release video a couple of months ago. This is following Bee and Lucy. Bee, I think is it Bertha? The wife in the attic from Jane Eyre. I haven't read Jane Eyre. I read part of it. I got really bored. Did not finish it. But it's about her and Lucy from Dracula, and they are immortal, and they're dealing with kind of the ghosts of their past. And this, I have mixed feelings on it. It is what I would qualify as fan fiction, since it's talking about characters from books, from like classics. And as a story, I wasn't the most interested, but as a topic, I think it did an amazing job. So you have Dracula, who has been killed, but not really. He's got his ashes in different jars that Lucy is taking care of, and you've got Bee, who's being followed around by like the voice of Rochester, and they're just constantly kind of on the run or trying to hide the vases of ashes around, but they have to keep going back to get them because the vases do move. And it's a really great look at trauma and how it follows you and how trauma can haunt you and can affect you for the rest of your life. So as a story, I wasn't that interested, but with the particular topic of discussion and how she illustrated that through the immortal lives of these characters was phenomenally done. I love how she explored that, and I think I might try picking up some other books of hers to see what else she has to talk about, because it's an important topic, and I think she illustrated it really, really well. Also, there's a lot of drive-in movie theaters in this book, and we don't see a lot of those anymore. The one in my area closed down this year, which is really sad because I love a good drive-in movie theater. I wish they were still really popular, but it is what it is. But that was a bit of nostalgia for me with this book. Then I picked up The Return by Rachel Harrison. I actually have another one of her books, but it's on the bottom. I first discovered her through The Return. I don't remember how I found out about the book, but I was looking for vampire books, and I found The Return. Technically, calling it a vampire book is kind of a spoiler. Sorry about that. But this is a very gritty exploration of it. So you start out by having this group of people who's grieving for their friend who probably died. Like, she's been missing for a while, but then she comes back and everything seems fine. And then from there, it's a really disgusting look at like the bodily changes of a vampire. It was so horrible to hear the description, but also I loved how it really went for it with the second half of the book. How like being an immortal is not a good look for you physically. And I really enjoyed that. I had a good time. And then after that, I ended up picking up the audiobook, these were both through the library, of Cackle, which was her new release at the time, and I really, really loved it. So now I have physical copies of both. This one, a woman moves to a new area, makes friends with a woman who's kind of an outcast, and magic ensues. And she's got another new release coming out, I think next year, and I want to wait for the paperback because now I have both of her books in paperback. But I think I love this author, so I might just have to pick up the hardcover. I don't know. It is what it is. Then Victoria, from what Victoria read, thank you so much for this recommendation. The First Day of Spring. This looks like a thriller. When you read the synopsis on the back, it sounds like a thriller. It is not. It is an awesome mental health story told by the author, who is a psychologist. And from the very first sentence, you learned that this child has killed another child. And through the book, you're learning about her family life and the way that she grew up, and particularly how she kind of learned about death and has a misunderstanding of what death is. And I loved this book. I flew through it. It was one of those rare moments where you pick up a book, and while it is absolutely not what you thought it would be, it's actually really good. A lot of times when I go in with certain expectations of a book and it is not meeting those expectations because it's a different genre than I thought or a different plot than I thought, I'm oftentimes disappointed. I think a lot of us are, but this one caught me by surprise in the best way. I loved it. So also we're following this child as an adult when she has her own child and how she's coping with stuff around that. Couple of more books here. I recently watched Literary Diversions, and she was talking about picking up The Haunting of Ashburn House, and she was talking about how this woman is in this house and weird things are happening and she's just trying her best to ignore them, which just sounded kind of funny to me, and I'm like, I want to pick it up. If you've watched some of my videos, you know I feel weird about haunted house stories in general. Haunted house movies, I'm thinking most of the time I'm not a big haunted house movie person. I am finding some that I like. Haunted house books, it's really 50-50. I either absolutely love a haunted house book or I absolutely hate a haunted house book. And I am trying to explore the genre more because I feel like I really want to love haunted houses. And right now I haven't read enough to the point where I know what exactly about haunted houses bothers me and what exactly I enjoy. So I'm gonna give this one a try. Hopefully I love it. No Exit by Taylor Adams. I picked up another copy of this because it's a good book. I just wish it didn't have the sticker that I cannot take off. But I did really like this cover. I have not seen the movie/TV show yet. I don't know if it's a movie or a TV show. I want to watch it. I actually just posted a video on book to movie adaptations, and I should have watched this before so that I could include it in the list. But No Exit by Taylor Adams. Phenomenal seclusion thriller. Love it. Pick it up if you haven't. I haven't heard of a single person who was disappointed in this book, in all honesty. Picked up 2 Omakatsu books. I tried reading The Deep as an audiobook, and the switches between characters and timelines was enough that I could not get through it as audio. But I did end up picking up The Hunger, which follows the Donner Party and kind of adds a supernatural element to it. And as a physical book, I loved it. So I also picked up The Deep as a physical copy, and I ended up really enjoying it. The Deep follows the Britannic and the Titanic, because whenever Omakatsu was looking into Titanic, because she is a Titanic obsessed person like I am, she found that there was someone who survived both. So she made a story about it. Really enjoyed these. I do recommend the physical copy over anything else because I think it'll be a lot easier to keep track of different timelines and different characters in these books. And I would say they're like historical fiction horror, which is really interesting and not a genre that I've heard a lot about. I feel like my voice is about ready to give out, but I have 2 more. Meg Ellison released a new book this year, and I got an advanced reader's copy. Super exciting. I love Meg Ellison. I have most of the books that she's written. I don't have her first one that's like an essay collection. I want to pick that up soon. Number One Fan just came out in August. This book is probably my least favorite of hers. Not because it's not a good book. It is a very good book. It is my least favorite because it's a little bit too much for me as far as what I usually read with thrillers and horror stories. This one, you are exploring parasocial relationships because you have a writer who is kidnapped and is dealing with this person who has a very parasocial relationship with her, a very unhealthy parasocial relationship. And I've looked at I follow Meg Ellison on Instagram, so I've seen her talking about this book, I've seen her like author readings and stuff come up, and I would love to personally talk to her about this book. That would be so cool. But if you're really into the nitty gritty, dark, horrible horror thrillers, you're interested in parasocial relationships, absolutely pick up this book. It was very well done. Just go in knowing that it is absolutely not for the faint of heart. There are a lot of triggers in this book that I wasn't aware that I had, and now I know. So very well done, just not my personal favorite because I am a little bit faint-hearted, I think, for this style of book. But as I've already said, very well done book. Very excited for her with that release. So, last one I have is The Remaking. This is one that I just saw it on the shelf at Barnes & Noble, and I read the plot and I picked it up, and I had a good time. This is an interesting one that takes place over decades, so it's like every 20 years. So in the 1930s, you have these two women who are burned for witchcraft, a mother and a daughter. And then 20 years later, someone tells the story around a fireplace, and 20 years after that, there's a movie made, and 20 years after that, there's like a remake of the movie made, and you're kind of following the hauntings throughout the years and the disasters that take place during the filming of the movies, and you're just exploring the stories of these two women who were burned as witches throughout the decades as their story is retold. And that synopsis sounded so interesting to me, and I had a good time. Wasn't my favorite, but I love a good time jump in a book, and this definitely satisfied me with that. So that is going to be it for this book haul. I am not going to pick up my two design books because that's going to be way too heavy, but we'll see what I can do with this pile. There we are. Okay, I got them all. Please like, subscribe, be my friend on social media. I will see all of you in my next video. Bye, friends.